In practice question 1, we looked at that we had the real money supply as m bar by p and real money demand as k by minus hr. And using this, we derived the equation in the limb curve as r is equal to k by y h minus m bar by ph, right? Now we want to sketch the limb curve under different scenarios. Now for this, let's first first thing let's recall something before we actually derive this, right? So let's recall something. So let's recall that slope of horizontal line is zero, right? Slope of a horizontal line is zero. Slope of vertical line is infinity. Vertical line is infinity. Slope of upward sloping line is greater than zero. Slope of downward sloping line is less than zero. So now let's look at the first part. Okay, as k approaches infinity. Now what is the slope of the limb curve? We know the slope of the limb curve here is k by h, right? Because this is already something that we have and look derived, right? So over here slope is just k by, this is something we already looked in an earlier video. The slope is k by h because this is a linear LM curve, so we can just compare it to the general equation of straight line y is equal to mx plus c, right? Where here the variable on y-axis is r, variable on x-axis is y, right? And the slope will be the coefficient of the variable on x-axis, which is y k by h. Now this is the slope. Now as k approaches infinity, we can see what would happen is the slope of LM curve approaches infinity, right? Because we're saying that this is approaching infinity, right? So slope of LM curve approaches infinity. And we know, I'm sorry, slope of LM curve approaches infinity. And we know this, and we know a vertical line is what has us. And we know when the slope is infinity, so we have a vertical line. So we have a vertical LM curve. And the second part we're looking at is that H approaches 0. Now, if H is approaching 0, so again, that means slope of LM curve is approaching infinity, right? Because we know, because when we have a fraction, the fraction is approaching infinity if either the numerator is approaching infinity or the denominator is approaching 0. Slope of LM curve is again approaching infinity, and we know what we know when the slope is infinity, we have a vertical LM curve again, right? So in both cases, when you plot the LM curve, this is R, this is Y, it's vertical, right? In this case also here, this is R, this is Y, so it's vertical, right? This is LM, this is LM. And then part 3 was that H, K and H are greater than 0, less than infinity, right? So both of these numbers are positive numbers, right? So what we're saying is that both of these numbers, this is positive and this is also positive. So this means the slope of LM curve is greater than 0, because a positive number to a positive number is also a positive number. So we have upward sloping LM curve. So in this case, if we want to sketch it, this is R, this is Y, this is LM. Right, and why I draw it as a line? Because we know it's upward sloping because the slope is positive, and I've plotted it as a straight line rather than a curve like this, is because we know it's a linear, because you have a linear LM curve in this case. As a linear function of y, we have y to the power 1 in this case, right? And part 4 was k approaches 0. Now if k approaches 0, so we're saying that this is approaching 0. So we know in the fraction numerator is approaching 0. The entire fraction is going to 0. So if k is approaching 0, slope of LM curve is approaching 0. And we know, slope of LM curve is approaching 0, which means that we have now a horizontal LM curve, right? Because slope of LM curve is approaching 0. This means we'll have a horizontal LM curve in this case, right? Because we know slope is 0 for a horizontal line, right? So this is R, this is Y, and this is LM, right? So we have sketched the LM curve under different scenarios, right? So for these different scenarios, to understand what happens to the shape, what happens to the shape of the LM curve to sketch it, we look at what happens to its slope, right? Because if the slope is zero, then we know it's a horizontal line. If the slope is infinity, it's a vertical line. If it's the slope is positive, an upward sloping line. Whether it's then a straight line or a curve depends upon its form, right? In this case, we know we had a linear form, so that's why we brought it as a straight line. So that's all for this.